In this video, I would like to explain how to use SQL Server and Visual Studio to do a Bayesian classification. So for our data mining, we'll use a database provided by one of your textbooks by McLennan. So open your SQL Server Management Studio. Okay, so click it, and then a little bit later you're going to have a screen like this. Okay, so instead of using your database, we're going to use a database named chapter 6. Okay, chapter 6. So why don't you open it, and also open tables, and one of the tables is the DBO voting record report. Okay, so this the data, this table has a voting record about many people. I think it's more like 400 some people about various legislation. Okay, so let's take a look. So this one is ID, a person's name, a party affiliation. I think Democrats, Republicans, and independent. And bankruptcy law, some pay-go balance, whatever, Homeland Security Act, Help America Vote Act, authorize the use of the United States, and so on, all the way down to a Higher Education Act amendment. Okay, so let's take a look. Okay, so the easiest way to see the data probably would be just right mouse button, and then can you see that? Select top 1000 rows. Okay, and then you can see some data over here. So let's remove this properties window. Okay, so you see tons of data with the values like a no vote and yes vote, no vote and yes vote. Sometimes you're going to find a nothing like this when they abstain for any voting. So yes, no, or abstain, or no. Okay, so using this data, we're going to find out whether some person is a Democrat or Republican or independent. So idea is when some people talk about their voting preferences or their voting records, and you need to determine whether that person is a Democrat or Republican. Okay, so that's the data we're going to use to obtain interesting information about politics. All right, so to mine this data using Bayesian classification, we'll use Visual Studio. Okay, so go to Start, and then find the Visual Studio 2013, and click it. And then a little later, you're going to find this screen. Okay, and after you have it, go to File, open your data mining database. You should have it, and if you don't have it, please let me know. Okay, so go to a Analysis of Services database. Okay, and then we can open your data mining database. Okay, and you know where is the location of the data mining database, which is OITAP 22. Okay, and then find your database. So mine is a BKIM DMSU 2014. I'm sure you know which one is yours. Okay, and then OK. And then you're going to have this thing called the Solution Explorer. And for whatever reasons, if you don't see it, or if this one just disappeared, and then what you can do is just go to View, and then choose a Solution Explorer, and then it will show up again. So let me do that for you. So can you see that X is a close? So now it's gone. So if you want to have it back, just go to View and Solution Explorer. Okay, so right there. Okay, now we need to create a connection to the database, the chapter 6. so that we can have an access to all those voting records. Okay, so as you can see over here, there are data sources and data source views. They sound similar, but they can be actually very different. Data sources, this one we can just specify the connection information. Okay, so let's just do it. So data source, right mouse button, and a new data source. Okay, and then this is the data source wizard, so they can guide you how to create the data source. Okay, so next, there's no connection specified yet, so new, and the server name as usual, OITAP 22. Okay, and we want to connect to chapter 6, not your database. We want to connect to the chapter 6. Okay. All right, so let's test it. Looks okay. So, all right, and then okay. All right, so now we have data connections to chapter 6 on OITAP 22. Okay, so next. And then you need to authenticate yourself. So your username, in my case, bkim. In your case, you have to specify your username. Okay, and the password, you don't have to tell me. Okay, so I have my username and password, and those are the things that you used when you log on to Seattle University network. Okay, let's give us some name. Okay, chapter 6 of DS data source. All right, done. Next one is we need to specify what kinds of data from that database we want to have. Okay, so it's that data source views. Okay, right mouse button, new data source view. That's another result coming up. Next, okay, we're going to use a data source we just defined. Okay, chapter 6 DS, and then next. Okay, why don't you just choose whatever is been chosen here, and then next. We have two tables, so choose this one. That's where the data is. So choose this, and then this arrow. It's right there. Okay, and then next. So let's give another good name. How about DSB, the data source view. Okay. Finish it. Cool. So now you can actually see the data. So go to this table and the right mouse button, and then you see that explore data. So you can see the data. So that's the same data you saw previously from a SQL Server Management Studio. Okay, so now we defined the data source and also data source view. So let's create a mining structure. Okay. Okay. To do that, just right mouse button, a new mining structure. Okay. Next, and we're going to use a database system available on SQL Server. Okay. Next, so we're going to use a Bayes classification first. So let's choose Microsoft Naive Bayes. Okay, I will do a decision trees the next time. Okay. All right. So available data source. Probably you have only one, chapter 6 DSV. Okay. So Next. So we're going to use a voting record report. If you remember, this table has all the voting records. Okay, so next. So we need to specify what columns we're going to use to mine the data. If you look at the tutorial coming with this video, we have a question. Question is based upon the voting records, we want to find a person, whether he or she is a Democrat or Republican or independent. Okay, so let's make our life a little easier just for our practice. So the first we have to identify the ID, some unique value which can identify each voting record. Okay, so can you see ID? So we're going to use ID as a key which differentiates all the voting records. Okay, and then also we're going to predict the party that the person is Democrat, Republican, or independent. Okay, so party affiliation. Okay. To predict that, we need to specify what kinds of data we're going to use. Okay, so how about abortion? Okay, and the Class Action Fairness Act. Okay, you can choose whatever. So what else would be good? How about farm security? Okay. How about homeland security? All right. And the Higher Education Act. All right. I think that should do it. Okay. So next. All right. And then we need to specify the data type. And these are basically about yes or no, or nothing or no. So text should be fine. ID is an integer, so let's change it to a long. So long simply meaning a large integer. Okay. And next. Over here we can specify how much data we're going to reserve for testing. So default is 30%. All right, so let's just keep it that way and move on. So let's give it some good name, the voting record report. Okay, so how about voting record analysis? Okay, mining structure. Mining model, how about voting record analysis using Bayesian. Okay, finish. All right, so now we specify the mining structure, and as you can see over here, you have a first structure. Okay, so once you have it, you may want to process it so that SQL Server mining service can read the data from SQL Server database and then do all the number crunching. Okay, so let's save it first. Okay, and then we can process it. Can you see that? Process. Can you see that? The first one, first icon. Okay, click. Alright, so let's just keep all the options and run. It may take a while. Alright, looks okay. So close it and close it. Okay, now we have mining structure defined, so we can do some analysis. Okay, so let's go to the next tab, mining model. So here we have one model defined using Bayesian classification or Bayes Theorem. as we did, so we want to predict a party, okay, the party of affiliation, using the data about Abortion Non-Discrimination Act and Class Action Fairness Act, Farm Security Act, Higher Education Act Amendment, and the Homeland Security Act. Okay, so let's take a look one by one. Alright, so this one should look familiar if you did an Excel assignment. So this one basically showing you what are the important factors differentiating between party affiliation, whether the person is a Democrat or Republican. So which one is the most important factor differentiating those party affiliations. So right now, the three of them identify the abortion, class action fairness, and the homeland security. And if you want to know more important factor differentiating those party affiliations, you can move this one. So now these two are more important factors. And among these three, Class Action Fairness Act is the more important factor differentiating party affiliations. Okay, so that's pretty useful. Alright, so let's look at the next one, attribute profiles. Okay, this one shows a breakdown of numbers. So for example, over here, population, the total population about Abortion Non-Discrimination Act. So if you move your cursor slowly, that will show you the data associated. So or you can use the right mouse button and then click the show legend. Okay, so about 5.26% people voted for this Abortion Act, and then 42.5% voted no for this one. Or you can just look at, let's say, Republican Party for Homeland Security. As you may have predicted, practically all of Republicans, 95.4% Republicans voted for the Homeland Security, and almost nobody, or 2% Republicans voted for Homeland Security. In case of Democrats, about 41% voted for the Homeland Security, and 53.6% voted against Homeland Security. So this is a kind of interesting one you may want to use. Okay, let's look at the next one, attribute characteristics. This one I think you probably saw in the Excel assignment. So in case of a Democrat, these are the characteristics. So most Democrats voted no to a Class Action Fairness Act and voted no to the Abortion Non-Discrimination Act, and so on. So if you change it to a Republican, so the most representative factor is vote yes for Class Action Fairness Act, and vote yes, voting yes for Homeland Security Act. Okay. Also, you can look at the discrimination report. So, for example, Class Action Fairness Act for people who vote yes very much favors the non-Democrats. So most of them are Republicans. So anybody who voted no for the Class Action Fairness Act, very much likely they would be Democrats, and so on. So this is a pretty interesting description of those data. Okay, Now let's do some prediction. So prediction is about given some data, you can interactively predict whether that person is maybe a Republican or a Democrat. Okay, so let's go to this one, a mining model prediction. Okay, by the way, we'll talk about this mining accuracy stuff later. Okay, so let's look at mining model prediction. There are two ways of doing this. One is doing interactively. It's called a singleton query. Okay, singleton query. Or we can actually provide the data using some database table, and then we can do it for many people. Okay, so let's do it for a single person this time. Okay, so can you see that? The small icon, the second one from the right, is the singleton query. Okay, so click it, and then you can enter the data here. Okay, so let's give some data. You can do whatever you want. Okay, so let's make it some no, how about no, how about no, and yes, and yes. Okay. All right, and then based on this data, we want to predict party affiliation. So can you see the prediction function? Okay, so we want to predict, okay, about party, and also we want to know the predictor probability. Okay. Okay. Let's do one more. This time also we want to see all possibilities. So let's use a predictor histogram. Okay. Okay, let's take a look. Can you see this one? Right, this one actually has three options: design, query, and the result. Okay, let's look at the query. Okay, so this is basically a SQL or SQL join statement. So we're going to do this. We're going to talk about this later. For the time being, let's do a simple start. Can you see that result? Okay. All right. So based on that data, we see this one is a Democrat with a 98% probability. If you look at this one, okay, this one actually shows you the probabilities of party affiliations. So for Democrat is 98%, Republican 1.2%. Okay, so let's choose let's use something else. How about yes? And yes. Okay, and see how it goes. So in this case, this person is very likely to be a Republican, about 98%. And again, 98% chance of being a Republican, and 1.2% chance of the Democrat. Okay.